The Canadian Media Production Association represents the nation's top producers of professional content for all screens, big and small. CMPA members make it happen. So does CMPA. To learn more about the benefits of membership, go to cmpa.ca.
And now, to open Primetime in Ottawa 2013, please welcome the host of the conference, President and CEO of the Canadian Media Production Association, Michael Hennessy.
God, I haven't heard a disembodied voice of God like that since the 70s. We're on a really tight schedule today, and I promised Mark Sagan, Mark and Lisa Morrow are the people that make this thing happen on time and on schedule, that I wouldn't go off script. So if you'd allow me a minute to go off script. Mark is, Mark's like this guy that just does everything exactly on time. And he not only is able to manage to make prime time happen at time, and it'll get back on time by the time the break's over, but he has total control over his home life too. In fact, his wife, Natalia, has promised, and this is a fact, this is true, she has promised that their first child won't show up until Saturday morning after prime time. Mark, that is brilliant. So, okay, good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to welcome you to the 23rd annual Primetime in Ottawa conference. It's hard to believe I've only been part of the CMPA team, it is the CMPA team, since last June. So much has happened since then. Of course, my life is now in order after TELUS. I was asked to come in last June as a change agent. And I discovered, that's the easiest job you have in the world. Every day I get up, I look out of my window and everything changes, mission accomplished. So seriously though, change is now the new status quo. In fact, just this week, the CRTC, to keep things really topical at prime time, not only announced BC Astral Phase 2, but as part of the fallout of that, we're also confronted now with a pending sea change in children's programming and animation in this country. At CMPA, our job is, of course, to help our members navigate this change. And these days, that's a bit like racing an avalanche down a ski hill. So, global market demand for video seems almost insatiable, and that should be great news. Unfortunately, in a digital market, the linkages between insatiable demand and revenue are often as unrelated as they can be broken. And this is creating huge uncertainty, including, as recently reported in the media, tensions between broadcasters and producers when it comes to terms of trade. I just want to say, no big deal. It's only about money. Everybody's a little tense these days. So 2 weeks ago, talking about only about money, an analyst commenting The Economist on the huge pressures in the film industry stated this. He said, quote, "People are still watching the same amount of movies they did a few years ago. They're just spending $6 billion a year less doing it." And that's the nub of the problem. That's what tension's all about. Insatiable demand may be the fresh snow, but digital is the avalanche. Because in a world of global competition and the disintermediation of suppliers through digital platforms, revenues can drop like a stone. Now, even as consumption rises. Now, MPAA head Senator Chris Dodd, our luncheon speaker today, probably has a few thoughts for the film industry on how to manage this change. But I think, the solution for all of us, no matter what part of the content business we're in, is to follow the money and grow the pie beyond traditional markets. But how? The formula, I think, is very easy, and that's to deliver to the audience what they want, on the platform they want, and when they want it. But the execution, the sharing, not so easy. Because broken as it may be, the status quo remains the only familiar train we know. But the status quo is the avalanche. Luckily, our keynote speaker this morning, Robert Tercek, can share his views on how to realign digital strategies in a world of disintermediation. Now, there's still lots of good news, and in 2012, there was a lot to celebrate in terms of value creation. The latest numbers from Profile show that the industry generated $5.9 billion in production volume last year. And that created 132,500 full-time jobs, not counting spin-offs, and almost $2.2 billion in export value. To me, that's proof positive that we've become an engine that's going to help drive the digital economy. And more good news, domestic TV production showed an over 20% increase in production expenditure as Canadian shows proved over and over again they can punch above their weight. This fall, 8 out of 10 of the most popular Canadian drama series were produced by CMPA members, and many shows like Flashpoint, Murdoch Mysteries, Saving Hope, Arctic Air, Bomb Girls, Rookie Blue, Republic of Doyle, and Mr. D and The Listener have become audience staples. And now new hits like Cracked and Motive keep adding to the inventory. That's because you, as producers, are doing such a good job, but it's also because our partners in the broadcast industry are helping make this happen. Can't do anything without collaboration. Canadian children's and youth programming performs strongly, with shows like Splat-A-Lot, Mr. Young, Johnny Test, and Joan Black, not only selling worldwide, but they're scoring really well on US networks. Lifestyle, too, has broad international audience appeal, with winners like Property Brothers, Top Chefs, Income Property, Eat Street, Ice Pilot, Love It or List It or Design DNA. But at the very time we're seeing that success, pressures on broadcast revenues are leading to risk aversion and investment not in successful Canadian brands, but shifting investment over to brands that are trusted, like Big Brother Canada and Amazing Race Canada. Now, those are great shows, and the audience, the audience is showing that, and you can't mess with the audience. But it's troubling. It's a troubling thing when you start wondering about what's going to happen to homegrown shows and producers that are already proving they can be successful in markets like the US. So to me, what's really important is that, Canada now, I think, coming from MIPCOM last year and looking around, Canada's the new cool in the creative market. And it's not just, shows made for the American market, for instance. It's shows that are considered programs of national importance in Canada. Last year, 85 shows that were funded by the Canadian Media Fund gained international distribution, and that included 31 sales right into the US market. To me, that is tremendous audience validation for the quality of our collective works. And, quality and recognition extends to film as well. Take the Oscar nominee Rebelle or War Witch. It took 10 awards at the Canadian Screen Awards. We don't know the name of the awards yet, but it did. It was awesome. And that's just one film. Think about Take This Waltz, Monsieur Lazare, A Dangerous Method, and Screen Award winners Midnight's Children and Blackbird. But don't run out to the theater to see these films because you may get lost looking for them. And that's really sad because in 2010-11, Canadian films won a total of 133 awards at festival, including 61 at the international level. The problem is that this news sometimes is a secret in Canada, in part because we don't promote our success well enough. And without marketing and promotion and distribution, you simply can't reach an audience no matter how good the product. And anybody that saw War Witch knows that that's a good product. But that's why promotion will be another big topic at prime time, and it's a priority for the CMPA. But it's also a priority for Telefilm and the CMF and CRTC, and they're all sponsoring work in this area. So good for them. Compounding films problems really are shifting demographics. Canadians are increasingly spending more time in the theater at home than they are at the theater down the street. And this is happening at a time when broadcasters are pulling back in terms of financing and exhibiting feature films in favor of dramatic series, which provide longer promotional cycles and involve less risk. And that's good programming, don't get me wrong. I understand the risk aversion. It makes total sense. But on top of that, for the film guys, we've got the DVD market, which was a principal source of revenue, and that's all but collapsed due to a shift in on-demand services and the persistent issue of piracy. So to me, the reason I think that this revenue implosion really sucks is because research shows that people still love to watch movies. But too bad. I think here's the formula. if the audience won't go to the theater, our products better readily be available to the audience on the screen they watch at home and the screen they increasingly carry on the go. That's got to be the new mantra. But that requires a new TV, streaming, and on-demand strategy that increases not just the monetization and financing, but also the promotion, exhibition of Canadian features. So hang around, because film's going to be a really big topic this year at Primetime. And by the way, it's going to be a really big topic at the CRTC hearings next month. So while we've seen a significant growth in domestic production, we're also seeing the beginning of a big downturn in the service industry last year. And this is particularly true in Quebec and Nova Scotia, and as we've closely followed the news in British Columbia. So this should be a really troubling thing for proponents of a digital economy for Canada. And it's troubling because the investment and jobs associated with our position as Hollywood North create that very infrastructure, scale, and talent that is fundamental and required to support the creation of Canadian intellectual property across the country. And ultimately, it's that intellectual property that creates value and is going to drive the digital economy. And to think this is merely a regional issue as reported is flat out wrong. It's a global battle. Increasingly, governments realize that economic growth and high-value jobs are going to be driven by the digital economy. And the countries or jurisdictions that get there first may build lasting economic advantage. So one of our priorities is to promote the economic value of our industry in terms of its contributions through innovation and investment to job creation and exports. Why? Because to remain competitive, we need to ensure that our financing incentives are modern and efficient and competitive. However, in times like this, to justify any change in policy, you first have to demonstrate value. It's not entitlement. And that begins by demonstrating that we have already created economic value out of intellectual property. Intellectual property, after all, is the most valuable currency there is in an information economy. But, economic arguments alone are not going to be sufficient. We also need public support, and that begins by creating buzz about the content we create. And that's why I was so pleased last weekend at the success of the Canadian Screen Awards. Thank you very much, Helga Stevenson, because those combined awards attracted a broader audience and took celebrating content to a new level. Our public affairs teams now have a mandate to tell the economic story in Ottawa and in the provinces on your behalf. But to create buzz, they need your support, because it's the creative talent and the content that you develop that are the stars of the digital economy. Our shows and our stars have got to be our best ambassadors. So, look, I submit collectively that we've done a really mediocre job in selling the audience and influencers on just how good and increasingly popular our content is. That we've actually had so much recent success with so little marketing at times is clearly remarkable. But just imagine what we could accomplish with more promotion. Later today, we're going to hear from the CMF and Telefilm, along with a panel of experts, on how to better promote the success and increase access and discoverability to Canadian content. Now, we all know that navigating change can be a nightmare. I wake up some nights struggling to sort out all these challenges, and I've discovered that it helps to try to put the end game into simple perspective. We have a new business models committee going at CMPA this year, making that end game a priority. And while it's not easy to define our future, we know this: it has to be built on a growth strategy that begins with serving the audience on their terms and on their turf. So why the focus on growth? Because the Achilles heel for Canadian success in production has always been a lack of scale. Because growth floats all boats, and growth is about defining a new future, not fighting over the status quo. The status quo is already the past. The status quo is dead. So while we may be hitting the saturation point in traditional Canadian markets like linear TV, there's still lots of room for growth. The market for content is clearly exploding. Maybe the boxes are changing, but the demand is there. And the demand for storytelling through multiple platforms is only going up. And this is as true in terms of international sales and distribution as it is for new production opportunities in the digital and branded entertainment markets. And what does growth mean? Growth means more pie, and more pie means less tension. And, you know, less tension comes from more collaboration, and we know that collaboration works. We've seen it on the screen. Domestic success of our products comes from collaboration between all our partners, particularly broadcasters. And our success at home is evidence of that. And the partnerships are already working on international markets on these principles. Just consider the success of international co-productions like the Tudors and the Borgias and Coppers, to name just a couple. So in terms of collaboration, rather than fighting over that dead pie, not your dead pie, but you know, it's a dead pie. Maybe domestically, I went off script. Maybe domestically we could discuss how to replace some of the value that's being lost in the conventional TV space by talking about how can we partner to create more value in the interactive realm, starting by leveraging audience engagement, because that's what it's all about. Or what about if we started talking about working with the sales teams of broadcast companies in the lifestyle space to actually work at leveraging and expanding the verticals in the branded entertainment market? Talk to Kit Redmond on her panel today, because she's got some brilliant evidence of success in that area. And talking about collaboration, we're welcoming our delegation from Australia. They're looking for co-production opportunities, and Matthew Diener, the head of the Australian Association, and I have been talking about some things that maybe Matthew will be able to announce a bit about at the luncheon tomorrow, along with our friends from the UK, Will Evans from the British Film Institute. So collaboration and sharing are and always will be the fundamental elements of our production business. But here's something critical you have to understand about independent producers before we can discuss any new opportunities. We simply cannot sustain our business without the opportunity to not only control, but share in the exploitation of the intellectual property we create. And share is a critical word, but so is control. And this is not merely an observation. This is gospel to us. And it's a point that has to be understood. And it's the gains that we've already achieved in controlling and licensing our IP through terms of trade, thank you to the broadcasters for helping us do that, that we're now so passionate about protecting. Because being able to exploit and share with our partners what we create is the essence of what makes us independent. And a world of consolidation, independence is going to be the critical element in ensuring diversity goes forward. This is just a good thing to remember. And it's going to be foremost in our arguments we'll present in the growing number of regulatory proceedings we'll attend this spring. So let me try to summarize what the vision is we'll be pursuing at CMPA this year. First and foremost, we start from the premise that the audience is ultimately all that matters. And that's whether we're thinking domestically or internationally, because if intellectual property is the currency in a digital economy, you know, it's still the audience that's going to determine the value of that currency. Second, we need to better promote the value of our products and increasingly engage consumers, the audience, in the creative process through tools like social media if we're going to grow. And that'll create buzz, and that'll create promotion at the grassroots. But success still also requires more promotion through the traditional broadcast windows. Because what gets promoted and what gets exhibited on screen gets consumed on screen. Third, we need to grow our business substantially by focusing on new markets for video storytelling, like digital and branded entertainment. At the same time, we're building our successes to date by leveraging the quality of our domestic product and talent in even more countries. And fourth, we absolutely need to change the political perception of our business from that as a cultural contributor to that of an economic engine that creates innovation, that creates export opportunities and creates high-value jobs, and most important, develops a future for our children so that they can excel on the world stage. That's all we have to do. Not an easy task, but as long as we follow a basic formula based first on audience engagement, innovation, and the control of IP through collaboration with our partners, and our partners from broadcasters to talent, to governments and investors, then I think we have a course to follow for navigating through that change. So,